Now, 5 years ago, what alternatives were there to buying a Ferrari? To be honest, not that many. You could have a Porsche, a Boxster or a 911, but some would say there are too many on the road and they're a little bit too common these days. You could have an Aston Martin DB7, but problems with reliability and the raid of the parts bin from Mazda and Ford didn't help that. So what else could you consider? Well, how about going back to Italy? A car that is built in Italy, that has passion, flair and style that only the Italians could produce, and a car that ultimately is under the ownership of Ferrari, the Maserati 4200 Coupe. There's no getting away from the fact that the Maserati is gorgeous, styled by Giugiaro, a Vital design instead of Pininfarina, who handle the Ferrari side of the business. Put the 4200 GT next to a 911 and its beauty stands out even more. A few other minor tweaks were made to the front of the car, but the most important change is under the bonnet. Now a 4.2 normally aspirated V8 instead of a 3.2 turbo unit, plus you get 20 brake horsepower. Maserati say that the 4200 GT Coupe is essentially an all-new car, while still retaining the same shape as the 3200. That is, apart from back here, at the rear. On the 3200 model, there was a gorgeous boomerang light shape, which ran right the way around there. It was gorgeous, there's no other words for it. But as you can see on this new model, they've ditched it in favour of a conventional light cluster. And that is, we're told, because the American market didn't like the previous lights. So they've taken notice of that. Sacrilege or what? The other big change is the gearbox. Because now you get an F1 paddle shift change. However, on the Maserati they call it a cambio corsa. But it's not just a question of jumping in this car, starting up the engine and driving off, because there's a bit of a procedure to go through to get yourself into first gear. First of all, using this lever on the centre console, you engage reverse gear, which shows up on the display. Then you use the up paddle to get yourself into first gear, and then you can drive off. It sounds a bit complicated, but once you get used to it, it's quite simple really. It doesn't take long once you're behind the wheel of the 4200 to realise what a superb job Maserati have done with this latest car. The V8 engine noise is intoxicating. It sounds fantastic. Remember, you've got 390 brake horsepower. It is, of course, rear-wheel drive. It's got traction control, but to be honest, it needs to be on, because this car could get a little tail happy if you pushed it hard with the traction control off. So I'm going to leave it well alone. You soon get to realise as well that the F1 change, or the cambio corsa gear change as they call it in the Maserati, is very quick and easy to learn. You need to slightly back off the accelerator when you want to change up, otherwise you get jerky changes. I've seen footage of Michael Schumacher in cars like this with F1 paddle changes, and even he starts to lurch forward from time to time, but oh, it just sounds wonderful. It's a car that puts a big smile on your face. It used to be a bit of a running joke that Italian cars were poorly built and terrible inside, but thankfully those days are long gone, and it shows inside this Maserati. The interior is gorgeous. I love the clock in the centre. It's all leather, including the console. You don't find that very often on cars these days. And it all sounds well put together. No squeaks, no rattles, as you would expect when you're paying over £60,000 for a new car. The steering is sharp and very, very responsive. It's a great handling car. So, could I recommend the Maserati 4200 GT Coupe as an alternative? Yes, I most certainly could. It's very different from a Porsche 911 or an Aston Martin DB7. It's a car that puts a big smile on your face, which will worry my wife when I get home tonight. She'll be thinking I'm changing cars already. But as an alternative to a Ferrari, well, it may not quite have the passion and style of the prancing horse, but it's pretty darn close.